You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to provide is true and accurate?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Jorde?
Thank you. Would you please state your name?
Dan. I apologize. I've been in the combine for the last 10 days, and I think I'm developing an allergy to soybean dust. But anyway, I'm Daniel L. Tronchetti, also known as Dan Tronchetti, and I'm representing Tronchetti Family Trust, which I am a co-trustee of.
Very good. And your land that is being targeted by the Summit Hazardous proposed pipeline is in which county?
Greene County.
And there are 3 separate parcels being targeted, is that correct?
That is correct.
And throughout the course of these proceedings, you caused, on behalf of the trust, which you mentioned you're a co-trustee, to be filed what's known as pre-filed testimony, written question and answer, as well as some exhibits and attachments. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And if we were to walk through, sir, those same questions today that are found in your written testimony, would your answers be substantially the same?
Yes.
And as you sit here now, can you think of any material updates or corrections that are important for the board to know?
None, but could we do 2 spelling corrections?
Sure. If you want to get into that, we absolutely can.
So just a matter of county pride, pre-filed testimony, page 3, near the bottom, talks about the county that we pay property taxes in, and Greene County is spelled with an E on the end.
Forgot the E on the end. Very good. Okay, well, that change can be noted. What else?
Page 7 in the middle talks about the IUB is all but guaranteeing the landowner will be confronted with condemnation treats. I think the word was supposed to be threats.
Oh, sure. No, they're not handing out treats. Okay, threats. We can make that notation. Thank you. All right. We would offer exhibits 222, 223, and 605.
Are there objections?
No objection to the pre-filed testimony and attachments thereto. We will object to 605 on foundation grounds. It appears to be a testimony or a letter from a person named Jessica Wiskus that is not here and is not testifying to my knowledge.
Well, I don't think that's, I guess recollect the very first day Mr. Dewinski said hearsay isn't something that you object to. Now, they said foundation, but I think really the objection would be hearsay if it's statements of another person, and since that isn't a valid objection, we think this can be admitted and given the weight due.
Okay. Board will admit, give the weight due. Go ahead.
All right. With that, sir, I'm going to turn you over for cross-examination questions. Thank you.
Mr. Taylor.
Thank you.
Mr. Tronchetti, I'm Wally Taylor. I represent the Sierra Club.
Good morning.
The Tronchetti Family Trust, you're one of the trustees?
Correct. There are 2 sons, myself, and then I have an older brother, Louis Barry Tronchetti, and the 2 of us are co-trustees.
Have you been doing most of the contacts with Summit?
Yes.
Okay. Is there anything about the trust that you think might limit what you and the other trustees can do with this land regarding the Summit pipeline?
My mother passed away in 2010. My father passed away in 2015, and they basically had identical wills, and that there was a section in the will where their farmland real estate would go into a trust, to be managed by the co-trustees. In one section, it stipulated that the trustees could not mortgage, sell, or convey the farmland property. And then when my brother and I are both deceased, then the farms will pass to the 4 grandchildren of Louis and Neba Tronchetti.
So how do you think that impacts your negotiations with Summit?
It put us, my brother and myself as co-trustees, in a position where if we signed an easement, we'd be violating the trust that my parents set up. The terms of the trust.
Right. When and how did you first learn of Summit's proposed project?
My wife and I were gone for the day. We came home sometime in August of 21, and there was a sticker in with our mail that there were some packages that we needed to sign for and that were being held at the post office. And I looked at the label or the piece of paper, and it looked like it was from a law firm. And I looked at my wife and I said, "Is this good news or is this bad news?" And we soon found out it was bad news.
Did you attend the initial informational meeting that was conducted by the IUB?
Yes, it was held in Jefferson, Iowa, which is the county seat of Greene County. Happened sometime in early October. I can't remember the exact date, but I do know that I had to shut off the combine, that we were combining soybeans that were ripe, but I thought it was important to go. And I might mention, my brother drives the plant. We farm together and we get along really good most days. And my brother drives the planter and I drive the combine. So if I'm gone, the combine doesn't harvest anything.
Right after that informational meeting, did you talk to any Summit land agents?
Not that evening. I was in a hurry to get back to the farm. Did not have any contact until a Kent Parker, employee or representative of TRC, showed up without an appointment on November 22nd of 2021. After receiving, my brother and I were working that day, and I told him we'd have to get together some other time to please call and make an appointment. After that, received numerous telephone messages from a Jack Scanlon, and he would leave telephone voicemails. I made sure they never got a hold of my cell phone number. This Jack Scanlon, I called him back in May of 2022 and requested that all communication be by email, that I had been tipped off that you could not rely on verbal commitments from the land agents. I followed up that telephone conversation with an email restating that I wanted all communication by email with my motivation was that I wanted a written record of everything they said.
About when was that?
May 5th, 2022.
Okay.
And since that time, there have been no emails, but they have continued to leave voicemails on my answering machine.
So have you had any actual discussions with any Summit agents?
No.
Can we bring up the KMZ? Does that appear to be your property?
Yes, that's accurate representation of everything that I've seen from the mailings that we have received.
And the white diagonal line there is Summit's proposed route. Is that the route that you always understood Summit was seeking?
Yes. Okay. While that's up, could the technical staff do a measurement for me? I've always told people it's going to be 1,200 feet from my front door.
Let's lay a little foundation first.
Okay.
To the southeast of the pipeline route, it looks like there's some buildings. What are those?
That is the farm acreage where my wife and I live, and we've raised 3 children who are all gone from home now.
Okay. Is the house, the building that's on the farthest east?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, can we measure that, please?
Looks like 1151. Am I seeing that correctly?
I think so. So you never talked to some agent about the proximity of your residence to the pipeline route?
No.
Nor any discussion about an alternative route?
No. Could you pull up, and I don't know if it's going to be attachment 1 or attachment 2, but pull up attachment 1. We'll see if it represents what I want to show you.
Explain what you want to show.
Different Tronchetti entities control 1.75 miles of farmland straight east and west. So there is no way that they're going to go around a Tronchetti entity.
So what you're saying is that there's no realistic reroute because your family owns all the property around there, and you're not going to allow the pipeline.
And just we don't own all the property, but it just happens to lay out east and west.
Okay. All right. Where would the nearest emergency response personnel be from your location?
Full-time skilled EMTs and fire department would be 25 miles away in Fort Dodge.
What kind of a department does Jefferson have?
Jefferson is all volunteer, and it's 20 miles the other way to the southwest. Fort Dodge is 25 miles straight north.
Okay.
We do have a volunteer fire department in Peyton, which would be 4 miles away, but once the alarm goes out, it takes them probably 10 to 15 minutes to get to the fire station, and then it'd take them another 15 minutes to get to our farm.
Do you have any CRP land there?
No, but in my pre-filed testimony, I described our farm as being in the region of prairie potholes. And I'm wondering if this map was taken in 2010, which was a wet year, and anything that's not green is a prairie pothole that was full of water at some point in time and did not grow a crop that year.
Okay. So how does that impact what the pipeline might do to your property?
The only reason that our farms are productive is because of tile drainage. And if they do anything to disrupt our tile drainage, the productivity of our farms will go down. One of the attachments is tile maps in the area, but I'll see if I can make. There's an 18-inch tile main that goes across here, east and west, and they would go through. It might only be a 12-inch where they're going through right there, but if they do anything to mess up that 12-inch main, could affect drainage for another 120 acres.
Yeah.
But it's not just going to cause a problem in that area.
Is that county tile or is that your personal tile?
That particular one is private tile.
And so just to be absolutely clear, you have not ever talked to a summon agent about any of the issues that you have with the pipeline?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Ms. Colas?
Mr. Tronchetti, I'm Jean Colas, Colas Family Farms. I just have a few questions. Did you have any contact with the Summit land agents that wanted to do a survey on your land?
No, I did not. And I forgot about that incident. I wrote it in my calendar on my desk. Let's go to how about spring of 22, before the crop was planted, on a Sunday morning. My wife and I are leaving the driveway going to church, and I look to the right, and there's two vehicles parked on the gravel road. And so I make a turn and go look, and there's people walking in my field on a Sunday morning. We're dressed for church. My wife says, "What are you going to do?" I said, "We're going to church." But we went ahead and made a circle around the section, and a mysterious vehicle tried to flag us down. I assumed it was somebody with the survey group, and I was headed for church. I wasn't going to talk to them.
So they gave you no notification of the survey?
I believe letters were sent, but we rejected them.
Was there any damage to your crop or farmland as a result of that survey?
No, it was in spring before the crop was planted, and they were on foot.
You mentioned you had drainage tiles. Can you show me on the KMC map exactly what tiles might be intersecting with the proposed pipeline?
Objection, Your Honor.
State the objection.
Asked and answered in a couple of manners. First, the witness has described a main with the questioning by Mr. Taylor. Secondly, his pre-filed testimony discusses his tile rather extensively and includes a drain tile map.
Thank you. Ms. Colas?
All right, I had a question. You mentioned prairie potholes. Can you show me on the KMC map where they are?
Yes. Any place that's not green, and so also in the 3 parcels targeted for eminent domain, there's a large prairie pothole up there that we lose the crop maybe 2 out of 5 years. Smaller prairie pothole right there, once again lose the crop 2 out of 5 years. Prairie pothole there. Outside of those 3 parcels, any place that's not green. So the soils are very good and very productive if the tile drainage is functioning.
Are you concerned that Summit has no experience building or operating a pipeline?
Yes.
Are you concerned about the water consumption?
Yes, and since I filed my pre-filed testimony, I've learned a lot, and it shocks me the amount of water that it's going to be required to cool the compressors.
Thank you very much. No further questions.
Ms. Kaufman?
Excuse me, Mr. Tronchetti, I'm Julie Kaufman, an affected landowner. I just had a question about, you mentioned eminent domain and that they didn't mention it to you initially, that you brought it up. Do you believe that this is a acceptable use of eminent domain for your land?
For a project to qualify for eminent domain, I think there needs to be a public use. I don't see the public use. Summit Carbon Solutions is claiming, either themselves or through Iowa Renewable Fuels Association research paper, that its public use is that it's going to save the ethanol industry. I don't think that's the case, that the research paper from the Iowa Renewable Fuels Association had several flaws in it. I believe that an ethanol plant does not have to hook up to a CO2 pipeline in order to sell ethanol into California. Let me get the name of it right. Siouxland Energy Cooperative, located in Sioux County, Iowa, near Sioux Center, invested $45 million in their plant and modified their plant and their processes, and now they are selling ethanol into California. The $45 million enabled them to lower their carbon intensity score. If you read the Inflation Reduction Act real close, there's also 45Z tax credits. There's the 45Q that everybody talks about, but there's 45Z. If an ethanol plant hooks onto a CO2 pipeline, the owners of the pipeline will make huge profits from 45Q tax credits. If an ethanol plant does not hook onto a CO2 pipeline, they and their farmer customers can make a lot of money on 45Z tax credits. The Inflation Reduction Act stipulates that you cannot double dip, that you have to commit to either 45Q or 45Z tax credits. I have a theory that Navigator Pipeline is struggling to fill out their business model because Poet Biorefining has probably figured out that they can make more money with 45Z tax credits.
Thank you. Also, I wanted to ask you about, you mentioned concerns about tiling and different concerns to the environment, to your farm. Do you think this is an environmental project or more for economic gain for Summit? Are they doing it for environmental reasons, or mainly for environmental reasons, or mainly for economic gain?
At the first information meeting, they maybe made claims about helping climate change, but after they got into it for a while, I think they walked away from that claim, and they've pretty much rotated to embracing the Iowa Renewable Fuels Association research paper and claiming that they're going to save the ethanol industry. But there's another major flaw in that research paper. You cannot lower the carbon intensity score of an ethanol plant by capturing and sequestering the CO2 that is produced by fermentation. The CO2 is classified as biogenic CO2 by the Environmental Protection Agency. The CO2 produced from burning fossil fuels such as coal, oil, or natural gas is classified by the Environmental Protection Agency as anthropogenic CO2. Anthropogenic CO2, let me say that again, anthropogenic CO2 is the only CO2 that the EPA tracks. Biogenic CO2 is part of the natural carbon cycle and is considered carbon neutral by the EPA. A good example is if you plant a tree, let it grow for 10 years, it absorbs CO2 from the atmosphere. At the end of 10 years, you cut that tree down and you use it, you burn it, use it to heat your house. The EPA doesn't care because that was just part of the natural carbon cycle. Biogenic CO2 is considered carbon neutral by the EPA.
Thank you. One other question. You mentioned safety concerns that many people have mentioned. Do you believe that anyone living, working, or traveling in this potential impact area is in a hazard zone? Do you believe that this is a hazard to the public?
Hazard to the public and a huge financial liability to Tronchetti Family Trust, that we looked into whether or not we would have liability coverage. And Tronchetti Family Trust has a liability policy with Farm Bureau Financial Services, and we asked our agent to research whether we would be protected. And the official answer that came back from West Des Moines was, we will determine if you're covered at the time of the claim. That did not make me feel good. So I did research, read my policy. As always, the devil is in the details. Mr. Leonard read a part of the Iowa Code 479B that talked about that Summit is liable, but in my research, the detail is, what if there is a leak or a rupture and the CO2 moves off my farm onto a neighbor? If there's a loss of life or damages, I do not have liability protection from my insurance company, and I don't think Summit would step up. That I can envision six attorneys on one side and 6 attorneys on the other side fighting for several years. And if Tronchetti Family Trust does not have good liability insurance, we have 760 acres that would be at risk, and we could lose it either to attorney fees if we have to pay our own attorneys to defend ourselves, or we could lose 760 acres to a court judgment for a pipeline that we didn't want.
So I hear you saying that the risks are much greater, in your opinion, than the potential economic gain that you might gain from this project.
We could lose 760 acres. There's no way to rationalize that.
Thank you. No further questions.
Ms. Grunhagen?
Thank you. Mr. Tronchetti, hi. I'm Chris Grunhagen, representing the Iowa Farm Bureau Federation in these proceedings, and I just have a few questions for you regarding your direct testimony. You've already identified where the prairie potholes are at on your property. Has NRCS designated or delineated any of those areas as wetlands?
No, they've been tiled and farmed for years, but some of the tiles approaching 100 years old and needs replaced and improved.
So has your farm been determined to be prior converted cropland then?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. If the staff could bring up page 44 of his direct testimony, I just had some questions about your tile map. Thank you. So what I'm going to ask about is I'm having a little trouble seeing the colors in the key, so I'm just going to ask you to kind of define that. the green lines, are those 8-inch tile?
Let's see, either 6 or 8.
Okay. And then is the red 5-inch tile?
Yes.
And then your main at the bottom, your 12-inch tile, you also, is that a county tile or is that your private tile?
That's a private tile, and it starts, dumps, goes another, from there, it goes another half mile to dump into a large district tile. But coming across, it's a private tile. My brother owns an 80 acres over here that it crosses, and then it's an 18-inch to almost there, and it reduces to a 12-inch, and my guess is the pipeline comes across here at an angle.
So that 12-inch goes on the eastern parcel at approximately northeasterly direction to about the north central part of your property?
It runs pretty much straight east and west, and it's actually in the east. No, it's in the south parcel. The line. So this is a half mile. This would be the center line, and so this one parcel's down here. One parcel's up here, and then it cuts the corner here such that it's in the parcel where the buildings are.
Okay, let me ask it a different way. So the 12-inch main, okay, does it enter into the eastern parcel?
Yes.
Okay. And once it enters the eastern parcel, where does it go?
Pretty much straight east, but it is not new construction. We hooked an existing 12-inch clay, and our tile contractor is hesitant to draw lines of existing tile that he's not sure where they go. But at the end, at the end, right there, we hooked existing 12-inch clay into the new 12-inch plastic. And the existing clay would go across here.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Okay.
Thank you. And so there is some tile that is present on these parcels that is not drawn on the map.
Correct. Anything that put in before we owned the farm, and we've owned the farm since 1976.
Okay. And there's a line there on your western parcel that says 10-inch. Is that a second kind of a main tile there?
Yes. Once again, existing older clay tile.
And does that go into the eastern parcel as well?
Yes.
Okay. It kind of in the east-westerly direction?
Yes.
As well? Okay. Have you provided these tile maps to your county inspector?
Not yet.
Okay. Do you have plans to do that? If the permit were approved, we'll put the caveat on that.
If the permit is approved, yes.
Okay. And have you shared these tile maps with Summit Carbon Solutions?
No, I have not.
Have you shared them with Ellingson?
No.
Okay. Thank you. Could we move on then to page 243? Okay. Is this the same map?
Yes.
I think in your direct testimony you identified that this is the alternative route that you were proposing? I'm just trying to figure out if this is it or was the wrong document put in there?
There should be a attachment that's more of a county plat book.
Okay. Could you go to maybe page to the next page here?
There you go.
Okay.
Okay, now see if somebody can rotate it. Yep, there you go. Okay, and then maybe blow up so that section 23 is bigger.
And that's section 23 is on the right side in the center.
There. Okay, so you can see, excuse me, Tronchetti Family Trust owns that parcel, also owns 160 acres to the east. And then over on the other side, my brother owns 80 acres. And then you jump up a little bit more to the west, and that's where I own 120 acres. And so we just happen to keep buying farms that just happen to lay east and west.
It's a more efficient farming operations than that together.
Yes, and
Yeah.
all of them have good road access. Since there really isn't a alternative route, that I would have a request to the IUB board that if Summit Carbon Solutions is granted eminent domain, that I would like for the pipeline to be bored underneath our tile mains. That I think there's legal precedent for it.
And that's the 12-inch and the 18-inch that you're referencing.
Well, I would define a main as anything larger than 6 inches. And so anyway, there was a case during the Dakota Access Pipeline that went clear to the Iowa Supreme Court in 2019. I'm going to not pronounce the first name correctly, Putney or something like that, Puntenney versus the Iowa Utilities Board. And in that case, the Iowa Utilities Board required the Dakota Access Pipeline to be bored under the tile mains of a Laverne Johnson. And if the IUB grants eminent domain, I would request that Summit Carbon Solutions be required to bore under any tile mains that are 6 inch or larger on our property. And hopefully 2 feet of separation from the top of their pipeline to the bottom of our tile in case we ever need to improve and change the grade. I would also request that you grant permission for my local tile contractor to be in the work zone and his employees so that he can monitor the boring underneath our existing mains.
Why don't we go ahead, we'll come back to this alternative route in just a second. Let's go back up and address what you're talking about. Can we page right back up to the tile map? That's just one page up. So your request when you're talking about tile mains, would that be then the 18 and 12 inch and 10 inch there in the southern part of the western parcel?
Correct, depending on where, not sure where the angle's going to lay out. Once again, our tile contractor does a pretty good job, but maybe not to scale. There's also a problem area up in here where he thinks we're the third farmer to try and solve it. And there's 3 6, like at least 2 6-inch mains and an 8-inch, and then we put a 5-inch all running through this. Must be a soil type that's extremely tight and hard to drain.
And your definition of a tile main is anything larger than 6 inches?
6 inches or larger.
Okay. So you would want them to, if they would intersect either the green tile lines there as well as the blue line?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. All right, let's go back to the other plat map here. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so you have some, did you draw those lines on there?
I drew the line at an angle where I think the proposed route is.
Okay, so that's the proposed route, not your alternative route then?
Correct.
Okay.
The fact that our land lays out east and west, I don't think there's an alternative route around us.
Okay, So you're not proposing an alternative route through your property then?
No, just requesting that we do minimum damage to our tile system, including boring under anything 6 inches or larger.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
All right, if there's no further questions, redirect from Mr. Jorde.
Yes, thank you. You had mentioned when you sat down that you're farming with your brother, and if you're not in the combine, it's not running, and I assume that's true for today in your presence here.
I want to thank everybody that juggled the schedule so that I could come in today. I think I started contacting people on Monday when I trusted the weather forecast that we were going to get rain Tuesday night, which the weatherman was right this time.
Now, you were just asked a series of questions by Farm Bureau, and they were all based on if this is approved by the IUB, what do you want to do? Does it concern you that Farm Bureau, the company you pay premiums to, isn't doing more to help you try to stop this?
Technically, there's two parts to Farm Bureau. There's the insurance company, and then there's the Farm Bureau Federation that you're a member of. And Farm Bureau Federation is more of the policy division, but you would hope that the two of them talk a lot and would be looking out for our interests, which they did last winter in the Iowa legislature, that they helped push legislation that I think would have given us some protections against eminent domain.
Do you think they've given up in these proceedings?
No.
Okay. In terms of Farm Bureau insurance, it's not a very helpful answer when they say, well, basically wait until there's a disaster and then we'll let you know if all the money you paid in actually purchased any coverage that's useful to you, right?
That's very discomforting.
Is Farm Bureau still accepting your premiums that you pay?
Yes.
Now, you had talked about the ethanol plants, and you're in Greene County. Is there an ethanol plant in Greene County that you understand is interested in working with Summit on this project?
Yes. Lewis Dreyfus Company has a plant about 2 miles north of Grand Junction, which is south and a little bit west of our farm.
And when you talked about Siouxland, you mentioned that Siouxland, you believe, is already selling quote-unquote low-carbon ethanol to California, and that they did some on-site measures to reduce their carbon score. Are you aware of if the plant in Greene County has bothered to do any of that?
Siouxland has completed their modifications and is selling into California. Lewis Dreyfus in Grand Junction, the only thing I'm aware of is that they've started buying some wind-generated electricity.
So back to Siouxland, you understand one of the big pitches here of why Summit thinks this should be approved is that it's going to save ethanol, and it's going to do that by allowing ethanol plants in Iowa to sell the identical ethanol, but we're going to call it low-carbon ethanol, to California. But your testimony is that's already being done without a pipeline.
Correct.
All right, so what do we need a pipeline for?
I don't know.
You understand that these are really just carbon tax credit pipelines, and without the pipeline to store it in North Dakota, Summit can't get any of the taxpayer money, right?
Correct. And as I mentioned earlier, I think 45Z tax credits would have more net economic benefit to the farmers of Iowa.
Okay, and 45Z, you're referencing the tax credit that's available for the producer of of a fuel that's a low carbon fuel.
Correct. Our local cooperative, Landis Cooperative, which has about 5,000 members in Iowa and surrounding states, are putting a lot of effort into trying to get a crop planted in 24 in order to qualify for 45Z tax credits, which go into effect January 1st. To me, it's strange that you can lower your carbon intensity score on the corn you're producing by just switching away from anhydrous ammonia to liquid nitrogen and to dry urea nitrogen, that somehow that makes a huge difference in the carbon intensity score of the corn produced.
So if we really cared here, if Summit did, about reducing carbon intensity scores, is it your testimony that there are numerous practices that can already be employed without a pipeline, without eminent domain, without disturbing people's lives?
Yes.
And do you believe the board should consider those facts when they analyze this application?
Yes, I think they will eventually balance net economic benefit, and there's just too many negatives that there'll be no economic development within a mile on either side of a CO2 pipeline. Nobody will want to buy a house. Nobody will want to build a new house. That you're going to create an economic development wasteland 2 miles wide, a mile on either side of the pipeline. There'll be no new investment, no new development.
Would you buy any new ground if you knew it had the CO2 pipeline on it, or that the land was slated for a potential CO2 pipeline?
Absolutely not.
You were asked a question by Farm Bureau's counsel of if you have shared your tile maps with Summit. Your answer was no, but isn't it accurate, sir, that since July, your tile map's been publicly available for the entire world to see if they cared?
Since they were an attachment to my pre-filed testimony, yes.
And water, you mentioned water, is that a concern that was kind of one that wasn't even on your radar until it kind of came to the forefront here recently?
Correct. And I had the opportunity at an ice cream social to visit with a member of the city council of Grand Junction, and I brought up that there could be asking the DNR for a permit to pump millions of gallons of water, and her reaction was, "Oh my God, that when Lewis Dreyfus drilled their wells, we had farm wells that were going dry, that farmers had to drill new wells."
So in that example, Lewis Dreyfus, they're already taking water, and if we were to add on to that tens of millions of gallons of drawdown more a year, would that negatively affect the surrounding farmers, you think?
Yes, the farmers and the city of Grand Junction.
And any other cities or towns nearby, other Iowa ethanol plants that might be partnered with Summit?
Repeat the question.
Well, the drawdown in water would have to occur if this is approved at each and every CO2 or CO2 emitter, i.e. the ethanol plant. So you're not limiting your concerns simply to the ethanol plant near you.
Correct. From what I understand, every compressor will require millions of gallons of water to cool it.
You mentioned a couple times the Iowa Renewable Fuels, quote, research paper, end quote. Would you agree that was more of a propaganda piece than any hardcore research?
Yes, and I hope that the Iowa Renewable Fuels Association apologizes to the Iowa legislators, the representatives, and the senators for using that to influence their votes last winter.
I don't think I have anything further. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're excused. Appreciate it. Mr. Jorde, next witness.